from our last series. And before that, on December the 28th, we'll be able to see more of the Queen concert, which we broadcast last year as our Christmas special. Brian's with me now. It was the last major concert the band did in London until this event in the glorious summer of '76 from their concert at Hyde Park in London. This is Queen from Hyde Park this summer. And let me, at this point, welcome to the programme Brian May.
Good evening.
Hello, Brian. Welcome.
Oh, Bob, nice to see you again.
Yeah. Let's talk about the film, first of all, because the first thing I'd like to know is what use, eventually, now, you're going to put that film to?
It's all in the melting pot at the moment. We just pulled that little bit out straight off the tapes to bring along here. I chose it because it was it's kind of the group in its raw state, which you perhaps don't often see on television. What are we going to do with it? Various ideas. We've used a little bit to make a film for promoting the single, which is, I don't know if you remember the film we did for Bohemian Rhapsody, which was kind of a little art thing in itself. Well, we've done kind of something similar with this. We've had great difficulty with the Top of the Pops people who have refused to put it on, but we hope sincerely that someone's going to see it sometime. And in that film, we've merged some of the live footage with some studio footage and sort of dissolved from the two, and that's interesting. So that's one use. Maybe one day we'll put a complete film of the show on, but I think it ought to be a documentary to show all the sort of trials and tribulations that went on. I'd love people to know what really happened at Hyde Park.
How massive a project was it, Brian, putting that show together?
It took a lot of people about 8 or 9 weeks solid work, including us. All the traumas from not being able to get permission to do it, you know, to wondering about whether the grass was okay. Do you remember there was a drought at that time, and they didn't want us to play if it didn't rain, which is kind of an unusual thing. Nobody realising how long it took to prepare for a thing like that. You can just sort of put it on and off in a day. Lots of things like that, right up to the last moment, getting very incredibly naturally kind of high before going on, because it was, although we played to large audiences before, this is London, it's our home, and that's something different. And then afterwards being threatened with arrest if we went on for the encore, which nobody realised at the time, but we were sort of hustled into a van on threat of being taken away to different places. It was very strange, because I think people got nervous of the crowd, and people worried whether it could be controlled in the dark and things like that. But apart from things like that, it was great.
Yeah, you were pleased with it on the day?
I was very pleased, yeah.
Just show that, Brian, because it is...
I have to show you this. I've been clutching this in my sweaty paw. This is our tour manager, Jerry Stiggles, scratching his head before the gig, beside a model of the tent, and sort of wondering whether it would all happen, I think. They did an amazing job, these staging people.
Because as far as gigs are concerned, you've been very quiet since...
since everybody thinks we've been hibernating. In fact, we've been working very hard on the album, which always takes us a long time, about 4.5 months in all. And
how complicated was it putting the album together this time? Because, I mean, it did take that length of time, and you moved around studios too, didn't you?
We did, we always do, yeah, partly because I suppose we get a bit bored in one place at one time, partly because we know studios and know the sounds that they can make, and certain things are better in certain studios.
Because I notice one of the things that's happening at the moment, in general terms, is that there's a kind of resistance to the idea of the band spending a lot of money in the studio.
A reaction to the big production.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I'm all for it. You know, I think there has to be a balance in that way. And I think we even feel it ourselves. You know, some of the tracks on the album are sort of back to basics. In fact, the first track, which opens the album, is a pretty basic sort of thing. And we're aware, let's say we're aware of the dangers of getting overproduced, but we like to keep a balance, and I think in some ways we feel that the studio art is an art in itself. You know, this is old stuff really. I mean, we've always felt that the live stuff was separate, as you know, from the studio, and there are some things which you can do in studios which are perhaps analogous to painting a picture, which you can never do live, and we think those are worthwhile things. And there's the most elaborate things we've ever done. You know, there's complete sort of mock orchestras and mock choirs on this album, such as have never been seen before. I'm very excited about it, you know, both sides of it. I enjoy the live work for its own sake very much, and I enjoy trying to get that onto disc, which is a challenge, but also the studio work for its own sake.
Already we're beginning to run out of time, Brian, but let's just talk about next year now, because the first thing that happens is you go to America early on in 77.
I'm pretty excited about that. This is hot news. We've just been talking to Thin Lizzy, and we wanted to take them with us, and they are in fact coming. So the tour will be us and Thin Lizzy, which I think is a great bill. You know, they're going to make us work really hard, which is what we need. So I'm looking forward to putting all that together.
Mm. What about Britain, Brian? Any plans later on in the year?
We'll be back in 3 months or so, and we have some tentative plans for playing, but I really don't know what's going to happen.
Mm.
I have great hopes for the new tour, because it's a chance to put together a completely different stage act, and I hope we can bring that, you know, it'll evolve in America as it always does, and we'll be able to bring it back to England.
Mm. The very best of luck, really, for
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thanks for coming in tonight.
Cheers.
Brian,
I'm enjoying
thank you.
Heart and everything.
Right.
Amazing.